Okay, welcome everyone. Today we're doing a deep dive into protective orders.
hmm
And for this, we're working exclusively with source material provided from the law offices of Haskell and Dyer. They practice in specific Maryland counties: Anne Arundel, Calvert, Charles, St. Mary's, and Prince George's.
That's right.
So our mission today is really to unpack this specific document. What does it tell us about protective orders? Why might someone need one? What are the steps? We're
Mhm.
basically guides through this particular text.
Exactly. And just to underline that, this deep dive is really focused. We're sticking strictly to the information within this source from attorneys Jonathan Haskell and Matthew Dyer. We're pulling out what they present, not adding anything else.
Perfect. So let's get straight into it. Based on this document, what fundamentally is a protective order?
Well, the source explains it pretty clearly. It's a legal document,
Yeah.
often called a restraining order.
Okay, a restraining order. And its main purpose, according to this material.
Its purpose, as they stated, is to safeguard people, protect them from things like threats, abuse, harassment, or, violence.
And how does it do that? What's its effect?
It works by putting legal restrictions on the person who's posing the threat.
Restrictions like.
Things like prohibiting any contact or mandating they keep a certain distance away from the person being protected. The source actually calls it a crucial legal barrier.
A crucial legal barrier. I like that phrasing from the source. Seems to capture the idea.
Yeah, they frame it as something for safety and, importantly, peace of mind.
Got it. A court-ordered barrier for safety. Now, the document also talks about why someone might want legal help for this. Why seek expertise? What reasons do Haskell and Dyer give in this source?
They lay out a few key points. One is dedicated advocacy,
Right.
meaning offering support, representation, basically making sure your voice gets heard properly in the legal process,
Right.
that you're not alone in it.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
They also mention comprehensive understanding. They point out the process can be, intricate, complicated.
Right.
So their expertise, the source suggests, simplifies that, helps make sure no important details are overlooked.
And they mention speed too, right?
Yes, immediate action. They really stress the urgency in these cases and say they prioritize acting quickly.
Which seems critical given the nature of these situations.
Absolutely. There's also a client-centric approach. They talk about tailoring things to the unique circumstances, using discretion, compassion, empathy.
So a personalized approach.
Seems to be the idea presented, yes.
Yeah.
And finally, they mention long-term support, guidance beyond just getting the order, thinking about future steps for safety.
So advocacy, understanding the complexity, speed, personalized approach, and long-term help. That's how the source presents the value of legal expertise here.
Exactly. It's their perspective on how expertise helps navigate what they call this distressing terrain and get those legal barriers in place.
Okay, now here's where, for me, digging into this source got really interesting. It lists a whole range of common situations where protective orders might be needed. It's not just one thing.
Yeah, that list in the source is quite broad. It really shows the potential scope as they see it. They start with maybe the most obvious one, domestic violence.
Abuse from a partner, spouse, current or former, fearing for your safety.
Right. Then they list stalking, persistent following, harassment, making someone fear for their safety or, invading their privacy.
Sexual assault is also mentioned.
Yes, the need to keep an assailant away after an assault. Legally mandated distance.
What else is on that list from the source?
Threats of violence, direct or indirect threats against the person or their loved one.
And just general harassment, too.
Ongoing unwanted attention, messages, advances. So especially after you've asked them to stop.
The source also includes violation of privacy.
Like sharing personal info or photos without consent. That's specifically mentioned.
And it goes beyond just conflicts between partners or ex-partners, doesn't it?
It does. The source lists child endangerment. If you believe a child is in danger from someone, like a parent or another individual. And also elder abuse.
Protecting seniors or vulnerable adults from exploitation, physical, emotional, financial, by family or caregivers, that really broadens the scope described in the document.
Definitely. And there are even more specific contexts like retaliation after reporting a crime.
So if you report something and then face threats from the accused or their friends.
That's exactly the scenario the source describes. And one more that might surprise some people, roommate or tenant issues.
When disputes between people living together escalate to threats or actual violence.
Yeah. So this whole list, taken directly from the source material from Haskell and Dyer, it really underscores how they present this legal barrier as a tool for safety in a whole host of really difficult, varied situations.
It certainly paints a wider picture than may be commonly assumed, based purely on this document. Okay, moving to the practical side. The source anticipates questions like, how long does this take? What different kinds of orders are there?
Right. The source clarifies the timeline isn't fixed. It depends on the urgency. And they describe different types. There's a temporary order.
Which is fast.
Often, yeah. Can sometimes be obtained the same day, the source says. But it only lasts for a limited time until there's a full court hearing.
Okay, so it's a short-term fix. What happens after the hearing?
Well, if the judge grants it after the hearing, then a final order is issued. That one provides longer-term protection.
Temporary, then final. Any others mentioned?
Yes, the source also notes an emergency order. This one can be issued outside regular court hours for immediate, really critical threats.
So temporary for speed, final for duration, emergency for off-hours crises. That distinction from the source is pretty useful.
It is. It shows the process they describe, moving from immediate need to potentially longer protection.
And crucially, what if someone violates the order? What does this document advise?
The guidance in the source is very direct. First, prioritize your safety. Get somewhere safe.
Number one, safety. Then what?
Then, contact law enforcement immediately. Report the violation.
Okay, safety, police. And then the source adds another step.
Yes, the source advises contacting their firm, Haskell Dyer, after reporting it to the police.
And why contact the firm, according to this text?
They state that violating an order has serious legal consequences, and that their firm can help ensure accountability, make sure the violation is addressed legally, and help get further protective measures if needed.
Got it. So the source lays out safety first, call the police, then call them to pursue the legal consequences.
That's the pathway outlined in this specific document, yes.
Good to know. And just to round out the context from the document itself, it does mention those specific Maryland counties, again, where Haskell and Dyer practice, Anne Arundel, Calvert, Charles, St. Mary's, Prince George's.
Right, that geographical focus.
And it notes they offer a free consultation. It also lists other things they do, criminal defense, family law, etc. But like we said, our focus today was strictly on what this material says about protective orders.
Exactly. That context is there in the source, but our analysis has been all about the protective order information presented by them.
Okay, so let's try to pull it all together. From this deep dive, focusing only on the Haskell and Dyer source material, we've seen how they define a protective order, the really wide range of situations they say it applies to, the different types, like temporary and final, and those practical steps if an order is violated.
And it's worth saying again, this entire exploration was limited just to the text provided. It's a good example of how you can break down one specific source, in this case from attorneys Jonathan Haskell and Matthew Dyer, to understand how they present a legal topic. We see their definitions, their scope, their advice, all through the lens of their document.
It really is. And thinking about that, especially that extensive list of situations the source highlights, everything from domestic issues to roommates, stalking, elder abuse, they present protective orders as this vital tool across so many challenging scenarios.
The very broad application described in the source.
Right. So here's a final thought, based only on what this document presents for you, the listener, to consider. If these are the common situations listed in this source, how many people might actually be in one of those difficult, maybe fear-inducing situations, but not realize that this specific legal option, this crucial legal barrier, as the source calls it, even exists for them?
That's a powerful question, stemming directly from the breadth of situations highlighted within the source material itself.
Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material on protective orders from the law offices of Haskell and Dyer. Keep asking questions, keep seeking knowledge, and we'll catch you on the next one.